So just as everyone's getting ready, if you can't read this text, I can't make it bigger, just to let you know. So one of us has got to move. And unfortunately, it can't be me. And I know it breaks every rule of presentation. I should have made the text bigger, but unfortunately, I'm limited at 24. I don't even know what that size, 24 font size. All right, also because I want to get started, I have a lot of things to show in a short amount of time. Though it's really not necessary for this, because I'll explain why after. If you do want a copy of the slides or follow along, follow this bit.ly link, and it's exactly what I'm showing here. It's bit.ly/apexcon18 OOS Utils, and that will give you exactly what I have here is what's being hosted on GitHub, but it will also have all my contact information. That's probably the only important thing from the slides, because everything I show is already online. And again, I'll explain that in a minute. We'll explain, as we go along. All right, it's 2:30. Let's get started. So I've got a confession to make. I have written the exact same code many times. And when I say the exact same code, I'm talking like, how many people here have written is valid date? Right? How many times, like I've written the is valid date at least 20 or 30 times. I've not only written it 20 or 30 times, I've sometimes written it 2 or 3 times in the same schema, and sometimes even in the same package, right? And that's a problem, but we all do it. So who didn't put up their hands? No one? Well, there's only 3 people. Okay. So usually what happens is everyone who didn't put up their hands, and you're too shy to do it right now, you're all liars, except for the younger kids who haven't even been able to have the chance to do it. So we've all done it. You may not even realize you've done it. When I say is valid date, you've probably done is number, is valid email, you fill in the blank. And those sort of common utility things are bad, because why should we spend all this time writing the same code over and over again? It's not fun, and it's not really what we're paid to do. We're paid to solve problems. We're not paid to write the same thing over and over again. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, is how to stop doing that, right? I gave a talk before on you're doing it wrong. This is like the longer edition of you're doing it wrong, focused on PL SQL. So I'm going to do a quick intro about myself. I'm going to talk about OOS Utils, and then it's going to be all demos, which is why slides weren't really relevant on this presentation. So quick thing about me, I've been developing with Oracle and Apex for over 10 years, yada, yada, yada. I founded a site called Aura Open Source. The 2 biggest products right now out there is Logger. Who's here heard of Logger? Okay, if you haven't heard of Logger and you're doing your own logging, PL SQL logging, stop. We've already solved the problem for you, right? And it's not just me, it's like, this is a lot of, even Oracle uses Logger, right? I've seen it in some of their documentation, so don't write your own, it's already been solved. And OOS Utils is our latest product coming out of Aura Open Source. And they're all free, all open source, all under MIT. I work at a company called Insum. We're a North American Apex consulting company, but we do some work in Europe. So if you have any questions, please come see me after, or you can check out our website at Insum, or just Google it. All right, OOS Utils. So I'm going to read this, and this is the mission statement and the goal of OOS Utils, is to provide a common set of PL SQL utility methods that remove the need for the creation of common methods in each application. Essentially, stop doing repeatable work, right? And everything we do always goes against this mission statement. And does everyone understand this? Yes? Okay. And that's it for slides. We're done. So you're probably thinking, what is he talking about? I know I haven't gotten a lot of sleep lately because of the time zone and the jet lag difference. This will hopefully make sense as we go along. Now, I'm going to do a bunch of demos for the next Oh, good. I've got 40 minutes. And bear with me. They're going to get cooler as they go along, and then they have a grand finale right at the end. Okay? But I've asked someone to remind me with 5 minutes to go. I will cut off whatever demo I'm doing and show you the grand finale. Is that clear? Okay. So how many people here have ever needed to sleep in their code? A few? So and just to give you an example of why you want to sleep your code, and it's very popular in a lot of different coding languages, is sometimes, especially with RESTful services, you may want to simulate what a delay looks like in terms of you want to pause for 5 seconds before processing the next thing. And right now, and I could be wrong, and so I see Chris here, he's going to make me nervous because a lot of things may have changed in 18.1. But as of now, if you do dbms lock sleep, what most developers would like to do, when you try and run it, you get this error message. And all it's saying is you don't have permission to sleep the code, and what you have to do is go ask a DBA. Now, depending on your relationship with DBA, this can be good. This can be a 5-second fix. Or, if you're like me, sometimes these actually take, and I'm not joking, a month to get access to, at which point you'll have forgotten why you even needed this. So, what did we do? We put in something called OOS Utils sleep, and I'm only doing 3 seconds here just to prove it out. Let me run this. And you're going to see that it just, hold on, I've got something killing them. Oh, it's SQL Developer. You're going to see that it really only should have taken 3 seconds. I'm not sure why it took 6 seconds. I think that's more of SQL Dev. But you'll see that took 3.57 seconds. It's usually a lot better when you're not screen sharing and doing everything. Now, this is not a precise 3 seconds, but it's pretty darn close to 3 seconds. So it's more of just for you to simulate your code. So you're like, not too much. Not too cool yet. Most people don't use it, but pretty helpful function when you do. The next thing is an assert. How many people here know what an assertion is? No? Okay. How many people have written this code, if x is less than or equal to 10, then true or false? Right? Or sorry, raise application. Let me restructure this. When you're in a procedure, sometimes you have to validate the parameters coming in. That, let's say, a yes, no is actually a y or an n, or a value has to be under 10. And if any of these things fail, you have to fail the whole program, right? And you want to do this as a data valid, like a little sanity check. And so a lot of people will write, if x is less than or equal to 10, raise an application error, and they keep having these large blocks of code, which are 3 lines each time. Right? And this works, except it's not very performant. Or not, sorry, it just takes up a lot of lines in your code. So there's something called assertions, and it's very popular in all programming languages. And now you can write the exact same thing where you put your condition here, and then you just put your error message here. And if x is less than 99, or less than 10, it will actually raise an error message where you can actually see this will show up in the error report here, right? And you can see that LX must be greater than or equal to 10. Is that clear? Okay. So it cuts down your lines of code, and I've seen this where in some procedures we've got 10 assertions right at the beginning. So instead of having 30 or 40 lines of code, we've got 10 lines of code, and it allows developers to develop much quicker. The exception what? The number? No, because exception numbers are when you actually really think about the problem, exception numbers mean nothing. I've had this request. It shouldn't matter. If you have all you want to do is log, then exception numbers, you're going to spend a lot of time wasting time on exception numbers. And we can talk about that after. But when you get down to the philosophy of things, you're focusing on the wrong area, I think. That's my personal opinion, though. But we haven't opened it up. It's just like a general negative 20,001, and that's what we're dealing with, just to keep it simple. So the next thing is Mime Types. How many people here in Apex, this is really for Apex developers, have had to write a download function? A few. And you probably have download functions, for PDFs, Excel, whatever. And for 5 file types, it's not bad, but you probably have if statements saying if it's a PDF, this is the Mime type. If it's Excel, this is a Mime type, right? Yes, some of you can nod your head. And it's a pain in the butt to actually condition for every single MIME type. We've actually got this function called getMimeType, where you can pass in even the file name and it will detect the MIME type. So I'm going to run docx, and we'll see this is the official W3 standard for a docx. Right? Does anyone, just to prove that I didn't hard code any of this in, give me a file name extension. Really lively audience today. You guys need to go back out, get some coffee, and come back in. Okay, someone. JPEG, okay. I got to put a dot there. So there, I mean, that's a really easy one, but if you had, I don't know, like, I don't even know if anyone downloads MP3s anymore, but MP3, for instance, it's there as well. So the nice thing is that what actually happens behind the scenes is part of the build script goes and it's a Node.js build script that goes and fetches the W3C standards and inserts it all into a table for you. So we have a full list that constantly gets upgraded for you, so you don't have to care or manage that anymore. And this can actually be a huge time saver when you're writing download functions. Speaking of download functions, how many people here have written a download procedure before? A few. Does it look something like this? Okay, some people are nodding, some people aren't. I'm actually going to close, let me just save this. I'm going to close SQL Dev because it's really, really slow right now. And I'm going to tell a little story while I'm opening it. Okay, so why is this important? I showed you SQL Dev, and there was like five lines to write a download procedure. So what most people actually do in their Apex applications when they write a download procedure is they go onto Stack Overflow, and they find the first result, of which may not actually be correct, because a lot of people actually don't write a download procedure properly. Oh, excuse me 1 second here. I have to enter in. Oh, let's just cancel. We don't need that. Sorry, you guys have to see this. You can see I don't actually remember any of my passwords. Okay, let's hope this connects. Anyways, so a lot of people go onto Stack Overflow. They find the first result on there and slam it into their code, which might work, but might actually not be correct. There might be certain bugs that they haven't even considered, or they haven't found all the different iterations and possibilities. So what they do, this is one of the correct versions of it, but a lot of people actually get this wrong. What we've actually done is I've actually written this is the download file procedure for you. So all you have to do is a download file. And the nice thing is, remember how I showed you the MIME type? MIME type was built so that download file handled all the MIME type for you. So really, all you do is you pass in a file name and you pass in a blob, which makes logical sense, and it downloads the file. So just to prove this out, in my Apex application here, I'm going to go to the download files page, which has a bunch of different files, and I'm going to download one of them just to show you that it actually works. And this is a logo. And if I go into the page itself to show you the code, and we go into here, right? All this is just to get the file name in blob, which is irrelevant. It's more of, you can write that download file in 2 lines or 3 lines of code. Yes, question? Does it support caching? I don't know. I'd have to look at the document. But you could submit it. If we can put it in there, we can. I can't guarantee that we don't have it, but let me know and we can add it in if possible. So next thing, validations. At the beginning I talked about is validate, and a lot of people will put in something. This is actually how to write an is validate function. You convert it to a date, and then you put, it's either, you return true or false, right? Is this a validate or not? So if I run this, this should return that it's valid. Right? Everyone gets that? That's how to do it. Believe it or not, people actually do get this wrong. And I've seen it in systems where on these edge cases, they get it wrong. Maybe they use 2-year digits or something. So what we've done is we put an OS util validation is date, where you pass in the date and the date format, and we'll return true or false for you. So just to show you, this Jan X is not a valid date, and you run it, and it says false, right? But if we had passed in a valid date, it would be true. Now, one thing on a 12C note, I know Chris is probably cringing. I'll show it to you after, Chris, because it's down. Let me just go here. There is something called validate conversion in 12CR2 onwards. Use that instead. It's from Oracle, but unless you're on 12CR2, I would highly recommend just use OS util validation. It's already built in there, and we don't just have is date, we have things like is number as well. And I forget if there's anything else, but we put in some of those validations for you, and we'll continue to expand those. Any people using bit logic? Like literally ones and zeros? Okay. If you have to, sometimes you have to do bit ands or bit ors or XORs and then logical shift left and right. We've actually got that in there. I full well realize no one does this except for very few people. We actually did this for something else, which is part of that cool super demo at the end. But if you have to do bit ands and bit ors and stuff, we've got the logic in there. So this is resulting in 001, right? So when you bit and 1 and 3, the first one only shows up. I'm going to skip this. No one really needs this anymore. It's like your old university days, but just good to know. So crypto. Crypto libraries are very important now, and especially whether you deal with RESTful services or not, someone in your team will. So the new modern development standards are you're more applying different services together. No one actually builds everything from scratch. You call a service. So for instance, if you want to send a text message to someone's cell phone, you don't build that yourself. There's a great tool or a great site out there called Twilio, which does all the mapping and spam filtering for you that you would call a RESTful service. Now, a lot of services will require, especially when you do OAuth 2 or certain other authentications, they may require you to hash or encrypt or decrypt certain functions. And in Oracle, first of all, A, you need permissions, and B, they actually don't, in some of the older ones, and even in 12, they don't have all the libraries for like when you go up to 512 or 1024 or even 2048. Okay, some of you may not have experienced this. If you have, you'll know what I'm talking about, or you will encounter it soon. And again, it could just be a permissions thing, right? The DBA may not give you permissions. So we've actually written our own crypto library that handles all the modern day cryptology for you. And just to show you, so here I'm going to do a hash of a string of hello. And was anyone here in, who was presenting before Alex's presentation? Yeah, okay. So you can do your MD5 hash here, but so here I'm gonna hash the word hello, and I did it in 5. Let's just do it in 256 and MD5 here, so it's a little better. So this is the MD5 hash, which is a very basic hash. But if you wanted to go up to SH512, which is pretty much what most people I think are doing now, then you can actually do this, and you'll have to trust me. This is just massive 512 string, right? It's this huge thing that goes on and on. Again, just remember RESTful services. At some point, you're going to need to hash things for security purposes. And if you can't, don't write it yourself. Someone actually contributed this. I didn't understand a thing. It's all this complex mash, so you don't have to do it. It's already done for you. And then you can also do max strings too. So here you can pass in hello with a type and a key as well. So if you have any hashing or any security things that require a private and public key, you can do that as well. So there's a library for that. I'm not a security expert, so I'm not going to go into all of this. Just remember it's done, and I don't think Oracle has every single library out there for you. Maybe 18c has changed things, but I don't know if it provides as much detail as this. All right, as you've been seeing, I've been showing you like the is validate, and I've been doing a lot of DBMS output of things. And one thing I've been doing is I've been doing this if then else, right? Which, as I've been pushing this whole thing of reducing your code and making life easier, why would I keep writing if then else over and over and over in a demo? It was for this point, so that let's say I have is validate returns a true or false. And unfortunately, although I still don't understand why, when you do it, when you try and convert a Boolean to a string, Oracle doesn't do an implicit conversion. Right? So if I run this, I will actually get an error. It says wrong number of types. Personally, I think this should be changed, but it is what it is. So what most people do is they write code exactly like I have here. Right? If it's true, then you put one string, the word true or false. Has everyone written this before? Yes? And it just pollutes your code over and over again. So I'll run this just to show this shows true, right? Nothing fancy. What we've done is we've done this OOS Utils string and your own personal tochar here. And if I put in a Boolean, it actually outputs the word true for you. It doesn't seem like a huge thing, but when you actually start logging your code and you get a Boolean, it's just a pain in the butt to write 4 or 5 extra lines just for one simple thing, right? And so now you can do tochar and pass in Boolean and it works, but it even gets nicer. So suppose you get a date coming in, right? And you just want to log a date. You can't just do like DBMS output sysdate because the date formats might be wrong. You actually want full string date formats, right? And so some people then have to put DD, MM, YYY, and then hour, 24 seconds, which is just nonsensical. So what we've done is, you notice it's the exact same procedure or function each time, where you can pass in pretty much any Oracle data type, and it will put the string, what I think is the logical string version. So here we do sysdate, local timestamp, systimestamp, and current timestamp. And you'll see it actually produces different results. So here we get in a date. Let me just move this up so people can everyone see this in the back? You'll notice that it does all the nice formatting for you, so you get precise information and you don't have to worry about formatting. So this is more of, think for logging, when you want to display it into a log table or on the screen, you can now generate that quickly without having to do all those, worry about all the date formats ahead of time. Okay. Next thing. How many people have written strings like this? A lot? And I'm going to tell you the problem of writing a string where my name is, and then you stop it, and then you concatenate and put in your name, and then you keep concatenating. Is what happens most of the time is you want to make this configurable because you shouldn't have to do a code update for a configuration string. So think about a welcome message when you log into an application or an email message, right? You shouldn't have to do it. So you should give it to business users to do it. But in a situation like this, it becomes hard to. So what people do is they get creative and they write their own replacement logic. How many people have done their own like replacement logic concepts? Right? And everyone's nodding. We've all done it, and it's just a waste of time. Why not have one single thing? Now, Apex has this, thankfully. In 5.1, they have this in their API. But if you don't have Apex, you may want a simplified version of this. So just to show you what this generates, is it generates a string saying, hi, my name is your name, and pass then. So here what we've done is, in C, there's a function called sprintf, and you can pass in $s. Now, there's also $d, but I don't think we support that. And so you can just say, you can tell your business users to, like, here's a configuration page, you just put in %s for every single point, and then they can write the message as you want, and we've already done all the substitutions. Now, I think you can go up to 10 substitutions. It's not to say we couldn't go up to 100, right now. It's either 10 or 20. And so all you have to do is put %s, %s. And this is a lot easier to write and a lot more pleasurable than actually, even if you're not giving it as a configuration. This is a big pain in the butt to write. Whereas this, as a developer, is so much easier to do. So you can run this, and it gives you a nice output like that. Now, for performance reasons, if you're doing this on massive data sets, you don't want to do this. You want to do the concatenated string. But most of the time, think for emails or welcome messages or something, for quick things, using something that would substitute all the strings for you can help out. By the way, it supports claubs as well. That's a really nice thing. The other thing, too, is you can also, because sprintf has numbered positions, so you can say S1, which is the first variable, and S2, which is the second variable. Again, it goes on for 10 or 20. I can't remember what we did. And you can run this, and you'll see that Smith was hired on this date. But you can even reuse those things. So you can do S2, S1, and then, again, S2, just to show you this, and everything's all there. Yes, Peter? The difference, so the question is, Apex String has a functionality like this. Should you use Apex String versus OOS Util? It really doesn't matter. We implement it slightly differently. So you have to just be clear on what you're doing. I even use Apex String sometimes. It's just, that's what other people are doing. I'll flip and flop. Where the difference comes in is for claubs. If you're going to do a claub, I think they support varchar2s up to 32K. And then this supports claubs. And so that's where the difference is. Does that answer the question? Okay. But again, the bigger, more important thing is don't run this in a high volume query. It's going to take a while. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's bad, but I just wanted to let you know. All right, reversing strings. So if you've ever need to reverse a string, let's say you see the word or open source, you can run this in a query, right? This doesn't seem anything fancy. I've reversed the string. The problem is, and I don't know why this doesn't happen, is if you run it in PL SQL, I don't know, Chris, if this has changed in 18. No. For whatever reason, there is no reverse function in PL SQL, which nonsensical to me. So we had a need for it for something else. So what we did, we just built our own thing. So if you do have a PL SQL need for reverse, don't write it yourself. We've already done it for you, right? Just to prove it out, it actually, let me just clear this. So you can see that we did it there. All right. Now things start getting, a lot of you guys I think are falling asleep. It's the boring presentation and lunch, post-lunch. Things are going to start heating up now. So let's say you had is it World Cup coming up this year in Russia? Or next year? Okay. This year? Okay. See, I do know of it. No, I should know this. My wife's German, so I hear when the World Cup's going on, we know about it. But suppose you have like your betting pools and you're going to show the top 10 people in your company that are winning on the pools, right? And right now you're showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Which is not really correct. What you should be doing is saying first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Right? That's what you should see on the screens. But most people just do 1, 2, 3, 4. That's called an ordinal, the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. You can actually do OOS string ordinal, and it will do it all the way. I mean, I'm just doing some random numbers. We'll actually do the first, second, third. We'll put the proper tense on every single number. Now, given that this is a German audience, and I did this in Montreal, and someone asked if we have it in French, right now it's only in English, but if someone were willing to translate for German, we could add a second parameter for your language preference. We could do that. I don't know if we could also detect it from a PLS setting, but I'd need someone to actually do some of the translation for me, because I don't know what that is. I'm sure it's different. You don't put ST at the end of first, right? Okay, it's something different. Sorry? It's just a dot? Okay. Well, all the time? Then it solves the problem. You don't even need this. You guys are like, why are you needing this? Are you serious about that? Oh, okay. Well, anyways, this is a problem in North America. And Chris, for the British, it's the same thing. Okay. So the next thing, how many, are you all Apex developers in here? Yes? Okay, I guess given that we're at an Apex conference, this one's a cool one. So suppose you have a report that reports on, I don't know, some large message block, and the messages are 4,000 characters long, right? You're not going to show all 4,000 characters on the screen because then your page is going to be massive. Does everyone get that problem? So you usually just truncate it down to about, let's say, 200 characters or something. And so most people write a case condition on that, and then they put 3 dots, or I don't know if it's different in German. Peter? You don't use 3 dots? Okay, you do, okay. Just checking. So that's the situation. So everyone gets the situation? And so I'm going to simulate that right now with, I'm just querying the Apex dictionary. It doesn't matter that these are some large blocks of text which are not, they don't even fit on the screen. So what I need to do is I need to write a case statement to say when it's greater than, I only want to show the first 20 characters, and if it's not, put a ... there. Does that look correct for everyone? Right. And this is what it looks like. The problem is, this is actually not correct because if anything fell in within characters 18 to 20, you shouldn't cut it off with 3 dots because you could still show it. And this just goes to show the point that not many people actually write this correctly. It's a common mistake a lot of people do. So this line, this should actually have 2 more lines in here, but it's a real pain in the butt when you want to do that. So we've actually did something called truncate. And here, let's just say let's do 30 characters. I'm going to say I want to truncate comments, and I want to truncate to the first 30 characters. So if I run this, we'll show the exact same thing. But you'll notice down here, it didn't do ... You guys notice the difference? It was smart. It detected that there was nothing else. And so this is cool, but there's something else. What is F? Right? Why show a partial word? And even if you show a partial word, you can cause even more problems if part of that word actually has a full word possibility. So the example I give is, it's not critical, but if you have the word fun, so if you saw F-U-N with ... does that mean it's fun? Or was the word fundamental there, or something else? And a critical thing that can be really problematic. So everyone sees the problem? So we've actually added something in that says cut it off by word. Oops. And if I run this, you'll notice that it looks different because it will cut off it goes to the furthest word and goes back. Now, just to let you know, there's like a full page of regular expressions because Oracle, for whatever reason, doesn't allow you to do reverse lookups in regular expressions. So we actually have to flip the word around, do some, anyways, if you want to talk to me after, I can explain it to you. It's some crazy regular expression stuff. But don't run this in high volume reports because it is slow. So if you have a 1,000,000-page report, this will be really slow. We've written it as fast as I think we can possibly do. It's open source, so if you have a better way of doing it, let us know. But it is really helpful for an Apex app to show this. And this, you'll have no ambiguity. Everyone will get, you'll never have the fundamental problem. And frankly, it looks nice, right? It doesn't look even that everything lines up with ... but people know that that was the last word and there's more to it. And you can also change the ... I think there's a parameter for the ellipsis. All right, how are we doing on time? Okay, so there's string to table where you can take a comma delimited list and change it into a table so you can convert it. Now, this is not a huge thing since we're all Apex application developers, or most people are. Apex has this functionality. The only difference is we support clobs. So what I'm about to show you, you can currently do in Apex string. They have this functionality. It just goes up to 32K, though. It doesn't handle clobs. So where this comes in is, let me show you why we actually developed that. How many people here know about the list ag function? okay? So when you do a list ag, what it does is it will, instead of displaying all the names, it puts them in a comma delimited or whatever delimited thing, right? So instead of having a vertical thing, it goes horizontal. And you can kind of see that here, right? The names don't really matter. But what if you wanted to unag that? Right? Anyone needed that requirement? We've actually created the list unag where you pass in the comma delimited list and it will pivot it to a table. And again, Oracle, I think the Apex API has something similar, except this will accept clobs. And why this is valuable is now that you have a comma delimited list, you can join that to the employees table and then do a lot of cool things, right? Once you're in SQL, you can do a lot of performant things rather than writing row by row. So what a lot of people will do is when they get a list is they'll loop over it one by one, then write a query to join to the employees table to get the employee, and that's just not performant at all. Doing this sort of unagging is a lot more performant. And from an Apex perspective, I'm showing you a comma delimited list. If you have a multi-select list, this is a problem what most people have. You have a colon delimited list, and that's where you'd probably want to use it. So if you select 3 employees, which 3 employees did you select? You can now get that and join to a table. And this also comes into CSV parsing. Now, I kind of showed up a little late for Chris's presentation, so I know he covered a bit of this. But suppose you have a CSV, and this is a very simple CSV, no escapes or anything. I just want to do it for demo purposes, where I have my first name, last name, and department, just with comma delimited, no quotes. To do this, if you've actually written a PL SQL parser, it's a pain in the butt, and it's lots of lines of code. But using the list unag concept, if I don't think I pasted that, you can actually split these up. So now I'm doing a list and unag with my delimiter being the end of line character, right? So I'll put a new row, and then with some regular expressions, I can actually convert that, not only rows, but split them up into columns. And then if this actually data existed anywhere, I could then join that to another table. So from a processing perspective, if you actually need to manually process the CSVs through PL SQL, this is a really efficient way of doing it. Okay, lobs. How many people here have written a query like this, where they get a lob and they want to show all the files a user's uploaded and the file size? Most? Okay. And how are those for business users that you're showing the file size? Like, I don't know if they upload documents. Yes? You guys, someone has to answer yes, no, yes? Okay, thank you. It's not that hard. It's one word I'm asking for. Okay, now, how many people think a business user understands what that is? Right? So if you follow me on Twitter, I tweet out sometimes the questions my parents give me. My parents won't understand that at all. And fair enough, it's not their job. In Windows Explorers, they see megs, kilobytes, they kind of get a general gist of things. So most people will, if I'm going to rerun this, they're going to write, how many of you have done this, like number of kilobytes? A lot of people. So you run it, which is still good, but again, most users don't know what this is. Right? They know this is 6 megs. They don't know it's 6,000. Like, they don't understand the 1024 conversion. And what happens if you have a gigabyte file or really large files or really small files? So most people then say, well, we'll do this, right? We'll write megabytes. Well, the problem is these things are now all 0, but that's not correct, right? And so you get into this infinite loop of all this confusing stuff. So we've tried to set out and solve the problem where you just pass in the blob, and we'll actually print out the human business readable thing. We'll detect whether it's kilobytes, megabytes. I forget how many different byte types we go, but we go to a very large thing that it's probably not the right place to put in the database at that point. Like, I can't remember how many zeros, but we do the human readable. And so you'll notice there's bytes, kilobytes, and megabytes. So think Windows Explorer, that's what we do. And if you did want to display everything in megabytes, we also allow that additional second parameter to force it into just megabytes, right? And then it will show 0.2 megabytes. Clear? Helpful for some people? Hopefully? No? Okay. All right. Blob to clob. How are we doing in time? Okay, 3 more minutes before I have to stop and shut her down. So how many people here have ever had to convert a blob to a clob or a clob to a blob? Okay, and what's your strategy? I'm going to pick on you, the D's there. What's your strategy for blob to clob conversion? Bingo. Thank you. That's the answer. And that's my answer too, by the way. That's an honest answer, right? Is I Google it. Probably you go on Stack Overflow would be your preferred choice, and then you check it. And there's a bunch of different ones out there. And again, some of them are better than the other ones. But why should you do it? It's like all this code, it's a pain in the butt, and what it happens is it discourages users from actually doing that translation. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just convert a blob to a clob with one line? Hint, hint. So here I've got something, and instead of, I can even call this in a query. I just say, if you look at your Apex application static files, it actually stores everything as a blob. So I want to convert this to a clob. And all I had to do was write blob to clob and pass in my blob. And here you can see that this README text was this text. And it works both ways. It saves you all the time. And now it doesn't discourage you from actually converting something from a blob to a clob because you just don't care anymore. We do it for you. Hopefully that's cool for some people. All right, I'm going to go into Apex now and just show you a quick thing or two. So imagine you have a situation where you want to only show certain things. I know I got one more minute. I'll show this and then move on. Okay, suppose you're in Apex and you want to show a report that only you know about, right? Like only developers see. You don't want to show it to end users. So you could do build options. You can put a bunch of conditions in there. But that's all these additional work. What we've actually done is we've got an API that says, are you a developer? Is developer? And so you see this collection here. It's showing up in the page. You're going to have to, just for speed purposes here, let me just edit the page. This has a condition that says is developer, and so it will only show up when I'm logged in as developer. And just to prove this out, so everyone sees the collection, I've done nothing in the app, but all I'm logging out is from development mode. And when I rerun it, it no longer shows up. So now you can apply content that is only for developers by using the is developer. And there is a difference between 4.2 and 5.0 and 5.1 is developer functions, and I don't know what 18.1 will be once we get able to access it. I'll show you. Are you guys okay if I go about 3 minutes extra? Because there's actually 2 cool demos I want to show you. Okay. And trust me, this will be worth your time. If you haven't found anything useful so far, this will be useful. Okay, so I have to reload this page as a developer. So how many people here have dealt with Apex collections? A lot. And how do you debug it? I'm going to pick on you again. I don't know. I'm just picking on you. Okay, so, but you can only check it in Apex, right? Or you have to click on the session button, you have to go here and do collections, and it's a bit of and then you have to click set, and then you have to look through them, but you can't query it like you do a normal database, right? Wouldn't you want to query it? And sometimes people actually write views on top of the collections, and it becomes a pain in the butt to debug it, because if I go into SQL Developer, and I write select star from Apex collections, I get nothing, which is correct. So wouldn't it be nice if you could query Apex collections in SQL Dev? Do people find a need for this? This is your extra 3 minutes I'm doing early here. Just remember that. So what we've done is I'm going to copy the session here. And there's this new thing called Apex join session. Do not run this in production. It says this in the documentation. It's only for development. You can join a session. And now if I query the values here, and even furthermore, if I want to query the collections, I can now run that all through SQL Dev. In 18.1, they've actually provided this functionality in the APIs. But until 18.1, which a lot of you probably won't hit for probably 4 to 6 months at least, by the time it's downloaded and they go through all the patches and you apply, you can do this. But again, don't put this in your code. The only time it should be put in your code of joining session or creating a session is if you want to write an email and use the Apex Mail API. If you've actually used Apex Mail purely from PL SQL, it gives you an error saying that you don't have a session. In OOS Utils Apex, we have something called create session, which creates a fake session so you can send an email out for you. So hopefully you guys find this is really helpful. And I hope you guys are excited as I am about this because it saves so much debugging time. All right, now on to my bonus, the really cool thing. So the first thing is I have to turn on build options here. So I'm kind of betting the farm. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to work, but everyone knows the normal login page, username, password. They're even going to apply social media login in 18.1. But how many people here have ever had a request for two-factor authentication or one-time passwords? Do you know when you have to log in, username, password, and then it says, give me your 6 digits on your phone? Do you guys know what I'm talking about now? Yes, or Google Authenticator? How many of you have had that request? Okay, and how many people have turned down that request because you don't know how to do it? No one's honest. I have, right? It's like, this is too complicated. I don't know how to do it. And if you read all the documentation, there's tons of libraries for Java and everything else. But now you can do it in Apex. I'm going to show you. So I'm going to choose my username. I'll just do Martin. I'm going to do this across the board. Email doesn't matter. And I'm going to click register. And it's going to give a QR code. So I'm going to share my screen here. So I hope none of my family texts me. Who knows what they're going to say. So 8534. So just to prove that I'm not making this up, and anyone, you guys can follow along. If you want to bring your phone up just to show that I'm not making this up, I'm just going to go here and open. So I'm going to add my token. Yes, and it's, where is it? Let me just try and shrink this here. So you guys can see that it's at the bottom there, right? That's my token. So I'm going to click done. I'm going to, where's my logout screen? I'm going to log out. And now I've enabled it. So if I just entered in Martin, and just logged in, it's going to give me an error that I have to have this one-time password. So I'll do Martin, and I'll just prove that I'm entering in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Doesn't matter. It's going to say invalid login credentials. Right, so if I do Martin, but now I enter in my one-time password. So let's just give me 30 seconds or 10 seconds here. So 530? Everyone see this? 213? Is anyone else following along with their phone? No? Okay. So if I enter that in, it actually works. And so we've built all the APIs for you. So you can actually do that live in your application right now. And that's why the crypto and the bit and were all created, was so we could do one-time passwords in there. And so you can use Google Authenticator or Microsoft's or Duo, all of them, they're all the same thing. Is that cool? Hopefully you guys found that cool. That was like the highlight thing. So anyways, thanks a lot. And just to, I want to give credit where credit's due. I didn't write everything. This is a community-based product because it's open source. So I encourage you all to check it out. If you want, download, install. Oh, I forgot how to install it. Let me just scroll up. It's actually a quote-unquote one-click install. It says this on the README page. All you have to do is run and copy this URL, and it installs directly. You don't have to download, unzip, send it to your DBA. You can run it straight in SQL Dev or SQL CL. If you run and this, you can install it as such, right? I can just show you right now. I'm going to go, and it's actually going to go fetch from GitHub. This might take a while given the connection, but when we part the build script, it's a one-file build script. So it's really easy to install. There's no friction. The docs, just to tell you why you don't have to actually go and I hope if you're frantically writing the APIs I use, you don't need to do that, because if you go in the documentation, read the docs, we've actually provided examples. We show you the syntax, and there's examples pretty much for every single API that we create. So it's part of our build process, so we don't write documentation second, we write documentation as part of our coding. You guys can kind of see that it's just been installing here. Unfortunately, it's a bit slow. And I'll just leave that up. If you have any questions, you can come see me after, or again, go onto the GitHub page. It's just Google Aura open source, OOS Utils. It's free to use. You can license it however you want or bundle it however you want in your application. We made sure of that from a licensing perspective. Thank you.